This video is for Written in Bone Dialectical Journal Chapter 2. So when you click into this assignment, when you click into the assignment, you can see the PDF here. You need to click Open Assignment with Cami. And if you don't remember how to use Cami, or if you didn't sign up, then you need to see the Thursday folder because I have instructions for that. Okay, so your dialectical journal for Chapter 2, who were you? You had to have listened to Chapter 2 that was posted earlier in the week. You cannot do this assignment without having read Chapter 2. So directions. Again, while we read Written in Bone, you're going to complete a dialectical journal for each chapter. And each journal is going to require that you write a summary, answer questions, make observations, work on some vocabulary, and occasionally you're going to have more assignments than that. Okay, so to begin your dialectical journal, we need to move into the next page. This is a warning. Again, you cannot complete it without having read Chapter 2. Now, because this is an interactive document, you can click here in order to access that. So if you need to go back to Written in Bone full text, you can click on it in your box here. Okay, the first thing is you need to write a 4 to 6 sentence summary of Chapter 2. And if you don't remember what a summary is, you can watch this little video. A summary is just a very short paragraph about what you read. You are not supposed to discuss all the details. You're not supposed to bring in quotes and text evidence. This is a chance for you just to talk about the high points of what happened in Chapter 2. What are the main ideas from Chapter 2? And you need to put it in your own words. Now, in order for you to type in this, you don't have a text box here. As the student using Cami, you have to type in the text box. So follow my mouse, move over here where it says text box. This is your vertical toolbar. So click text box. It automatically selects a black font, and then just right here in this blue space in the upper left corner, click it and your toolbox is moved there. Now what I really love about this toolbox, or this text box, not toolbox, text box, is as you type, it expands with whatever you're typing. You notice it goes across the page. If you need to make adjustments to the side of it, to the size of it, you see these 4 blue dots at the corners? When you hover over it, your mouse becomes a white arrow with 2 ends. With your left hand, click the left side of your mouse pad, and with your right hand, drag that text box to wherever you want it to fit. Okay? So as you're typing, that text box can grow with it, or you can adjust the size yourself. I don't want to keep this on here, so if you see this red X, that means you get rid of the text box. Again, I'll go through that one more time. When you want to add a text box, make sure it's selected over here. It says text box. Click wherever you want the text box to go. So click here. If you want to adjust the size of your text box, you see these 4 circles on the edges. Hover over it with your mouse. With your left hand, you need to click the left side of your mouse pad and then drag that text box with your right, and it expands. If you need to move the text box, you put it in the wrong place. When you put your mouse on the blue line of the text box, you notice it becomes 4 arrows. Hold it with your left hand, and you can move that text box around with your right. So on this page, you were just writing a 4 to 6 sentence summary of Chapter 2. You were talking about the main ideas. What is the main purpose of Chapter 2? Put it in your own words. You have to write in complete sentences. 1 sentence, 2 sentences, that's not a summary, and it will not be acceptable. You will miss it if you type in 1 or 2 sentences. Let's go to the next page. Observations and questions. If you need to go back to the text, the story, to answer your questions, that's fine. So, how do the vocabulary, How do the vocabulary terms from this chapter, see below these vocab terms, contribute to understanding JR 1225B? So how do these words help us understand what happened to JR 1225B? So let's look at it. Remember in the story it says in situ, this is when you find something and you leave it exactly as you find it. So when they were digging up these graves, they didn't immediately pull the skeletons out or pull the artifacts out. They leave the skeletons where they are and try to study the skeletons from the grave. Because if you mess with it, it can cause the skeleton to disintegrate, or they can't recreate the skeleton. They can't put it back in the exact same position with 100% accuracy. Pedestaling something. This is dealing with the dirt. So you need to go back in chapter 2 and find this word. This is when you leave the dirt that the skeleton is on. So leave that base of dirt, but remove everything else. Shrouded is dealing with the cloth wrapped around a deceased person, wrapped around the skeleton. So you need to go back and find where it mentions shrouded. I'm sorry, let's go back to shrouded. So shrouded is when they take a cloth and wrap it around a dead body. You need to, and they do it so you keep the limbs together so that the legs don't splay over time. They do this based off of their culture. This is a very careful process. Now, if a skeleton was revealed to not have been shrouded, that was very telling as to what was going on at the time of burial. Maybe they were under attack and they didn't have time to wrap the bodies. Maybe the deceased person had died of a disease, and so they buried the person very quickly and didn't take off their clothes and put on a shroud because they were afraid of the spread of disease. You need to figure out, was JR 1225B shrouded? If he was, what does that say about his burial? If he was not, what does that say about his burial? Epiphysis, I'm going to go back to the text. Epiphysis is dealing with the long bones right here. Okay, remember I talked about in the video, up until a certain age, the bony caps on your long bones are not attached completely to the long bone. They are attached by a divide of cartilage. And as you get older, that cartilage goes away and these bones fuse together. So they use this process to determine how old a person is. So if you reach a certain age and your bones are fused together, then they know that you're older than your teen years. If your bones still look like this, you still have this divide between the bony cap and the long bone, then they know that you are still an adolescent. What could they tell about JR 1225B's long bones? Were they fused together, like this right here, or was there still a line? How did that help them determine his age? The molars in your mouth. As we get older, your teeth come in at different times, and you had this picture to help you understand that. So the molars here. It says children lose their first baby teeth when they are 5 to 6 years old, and at this age they get their first set of molars, the large flat teeth at the back of their mouth. But the second set of molars doesn't grow in until about 12 years old. And then you have your third and last set of molars. This is called your wisdom teeth. This grows in at about 18 years old. So if you have one set of molars or two set of molars, or you have all three, it helps tell us how old you are. Your first set comes in at 5 to 6. Your second set comes in at 12. And your third comes in at about 18 years old. If you don't have your third set of molars, then we know you're probably younger than 18 years old. So what could they tell about JR 1225B's teeth based off of his molars? And then ancestry. So if we go back to this text, ancestry. This is the last section, where did you come from? They can use the human remains to figure out where a person came from. Were they of African descent? Were they European descent, Native American descent? And how did they determine that? Well, they have to look at that person's skull. According to this chart, a person with African descent, European descent, and Native American descent have different skull features. So I'll let you read through that. I read it over in chapter 2, but use this chart to help you figure that out. Down here, it talks about JR 1225 and them studying his skull. It mentions his nose, his cheeks, his jaw, and what it looked like, and how they compared that information to this chart. What did they learn about his ancestry based off of his skull?